Hey, what is going on guys? Represent Stealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the new strong and weak picks coming up for patch 8.18. The giveaway I'm running with a few other YouTubers is still going on as well right now, guys, so if you've yet to enter into that, then there is going to be a link down in the description below. We're giving away a headset from Blue Microphones, and we're also giving away $100 worth of RP. So we're going to start off by taking a look at the stronger champions, and then after that we'll head into the weaker champions. So to start it off here, the first champion getting stronger for next patch is Victor. Now Victor is getting changed to where the cost of his first upgrade is being lowered by 100 gold. Now the item overall is still going to cost the same amount of gold because the perfect hex score is being increased from 750 up to 850, but this is going to be a buff to Victor because it does mean it's going to be a lot easier now in the early game to grab your first upgrade, and your early game is going to be definitely a lot more manageable now in 8.18. I think that Victor in this patch isn't even all that bad. A lot of people right now are running the corrupting potion on him. They're also going for time wart tonic, and with that setup, his early game isn't all that bad, and especially in certain matchups, Victor can actually do quite well in the early game. So I do think that with these changes, it should bump him up into A tier for solo queue. So next up here, Vayne is getting buffed, and with Worlds coming up in 2 patches, Riot probably wants to try and get Vayne somewhere in the meta for AD carry, so it's not too much of a surprise that she is getting buffed. She's a champion that a lot of people do like to watch in the competitive scene, so her Q's cooldown is being lowered by 2 seconds at rank 1. Now that's actually very significant there. It does make Vayne's early game quite a bit stronger. Vayne's early game is her weakest point, so by buffing her early game here, I do think that for solo queue, this does bump her up from B tier into A tier. Because most champions' main trading ability are on a lot longer of a cooldown than 4 seconds in the early game, this does mean that Vayne's probably actually going to be able to trade quite well in the early game against a lot of other AD carries, and this also does help Vayne out if she is getting shoved in under tower as well. It means that she is going to be able to CS a lot easier under tower now due to the auto reset there with her Q being on a much shorter cooldown. So another AD carry getting buffed for next patch is Lucian. Now the only reason as to why I think Lucian would be getting buffed in next patch is the same as to why Vayne was buffed. Worlds is coming up here, and because Lucian is another AD carry that a lot of people like to watch in the competitive scene, I do think that's why he's getting buffed for next patch, because right now he's sitting at a very high win rate in solo queue. It's at around 51-52%. He's also sitting at a very high play rate at around like 25%, so it doesn't really make sense for him to get buffed. I don't think that if Worlds were not coming up in the next 2 patches, I don't think Lucian would be getting these buffs. So the buff to his Q here is getting a base AD increase of 20% at rank 5, and because you do max this out first, it is going to be coming into effect pretty early on into the game. I do think that for solo queue, this does bump Lucian up into an S tier AD carry now for patch 8.18, and for the competitive scene, it's probably going to bump him up as well, and we will see some Lucian play at Worlds. So Aatrox is getting a few buffs for next patch. He's getting a buff to his ease healing once you do get it maxed out. It is going to be relatively the same in the early game there, and then for his ultimate, his AD on it is being increased by a little bit once you do get rank 2 and rank 3 in it. So I don't think this change moves Aatrox up too much for next patch. I still think he's going to stay a B tier top lane pick. The nerfs that he got hit with a few patches back really did impact him, and with these buffs here, I just don't see him being that much stronger for 8.18. If you take a look at the changes here, they don't really come into effect until you reach the mid to late game. Until you do max out your E, it's still going to be the same amount of healing at rank 1. It gets increased by a little bit there at rank 2 and rank 3, so the change doesn't really matter too much. And then also his ultimate is not even being increased at all at rank 1. I feel like if they did increase it by a little bit at rank 1, this would make him stronger for next patch, but it's only getting increased at rank 2. And even at rank 2, it's only being increased by 2.5%. So I think that although these changes are nice for Aatrox, he's still going to stay where he is in 8.17. So Renekton is getting a similar change to Aatrox in the sense that it's not really going to move him anywhere on the tier list. I still think Renekton is going to stay an A tier pick for 8.18. So the change he's getting is to his E, to where the Dice Fury bonus, it is being increased there by 10% in the early game, and then the damage on the Dice Fury bonus is being increased by a little bit as well. So keep in mind though that this is the Dice Fury bonus, and a lot of the time in the early game, you're not going to be using your Fury on the dice part of your E when you are trading. When you do go into trade, a lot of the time you're going to be using your Fury on your W or your Q, and you won't have enough to use it on the dice part. This is going to come into effect once you do hit level 6 and once you do have your ultimate, but I do think that for the early game, this doesn't really affect Renekton too much at all, and that's why he isn't really moving up in the tier list for next patch. So if we take a look at the weaker champs now for 8.18, the first one here is going to be Akali. So Akali's ult damage is being lowered by 20 at rank 1, 30 at rank 2, and then by 40 at rank 3. Now there are two parts to Akali's ultimate though, so technically if you're able to get both parts of her ultimate off, you're going to be losing a little bit more damage. So it's going to be 40 at rank 1, 60 at rank 2, and then 80 at rank 3. I don't think this is enough to drop Akali down though. I still think she's going to stay an A tier pick for 8.18. So Ryze is getting hit with a nerf for next patch. Now obviously this is targeted towards the competitive scene because Ryze in solo queue is just a pretty garbage pick right now, and if you are looking to climb, I would definitely stay away from him. He's still going to stay at the bottom of the tier list. He's still going to be a C tier mid laner for 8.18 for solo queue. His W flux bonus root duration is being lowered from 2 seconds to 1.5 seconds, so this does hurt Ryze's ability to lock someone down and just burst them out. Like in the early game, his gank assist is going to be a little bit weaker and his pick potential is going to be a little bit weaker as well, but just overall, stay away from Ryze if you're looking to climb in solo queue. And then another champion getting nerfed here, targeted towards the competitive scene, is Sejuani. So Sejuani is getting a nerf to her E's damage. It's being lowered by 10 at all ranks, and then her ultimate is also getting nerfed. The slow duration is being lowered from 3 seconds all the way down to 1 second. So this is actually a pretty big nerf to Sejuani, especially if you're like an average Sejuani player and you can't land your ultimate. So I think that with this change here, Xmithy is probably not going to be playing Sejuani anymore, because having only a 1 second slow there on your ultimate, if you're missing it and if you're only able to get the slow, isn't really going to make it that great of an ability. You definitely need to be able to hit your ultimate on Sejuani, get the stun for it to be effective there in team fights. Overall though, Sejuani is still going to be a very weak pick for solo queue. She's going to be a C tier pick, so I would not recommend playing her if you are looking to climb for next patch. And then lastly, to round out the video here, yet another nerf targeted towards the competitive scene. Now this one is to Trundle, and his E's cooldown, it is being increased by a little bit there in the early game. Not that big of a deal in my opinion. His E's slow is also being reduced in the early game, and this one is a little bit bigger here, but I don't think that, at least for the competitive scene, this really makes Trundle that much weaker. This might drop him down into B tier for solo queue, but I still think that he is going to stay in A tier pick in solo queue for next patch. They're not getting rid of his damage at all. They're not nerfing his ultimate. I think his ultimate is one of the main reasons as to why he's a strong pick like in the competitive scene, and because they're not nerfing that, because they're not nerfing his Q damage anymore for next patch, I still think he is going to stay an A tier pick. So the cooldown nerf there, it doesn't really matter, because in the early game with Trundle's E, it's not like you're using it off cooldown. Whenever you do use your E like on a gank or in a skirmish, you're only going to be using it once a lot of the time, and you're not even going to have a chance to use it a second time. So a 2 second increase there really doesn't matter at all. His E slow also doesn't matter that much, because when you're using your E with Trundle, as long as you're placing it correctly when you are ganking, just because it does put up the pillar and it blocks the enemy's path, that often is enough to burn a flash in the early game or to just allow yourself to get kills when you are ganking. So I really don't think that these changes are gonna make Trundle weaker for next patch. So that is what we're looking at heading into patch 8.18. Not a ton of changes, not a ton of meta shifting changes for next patch. I would definitely watch out for Vayne and Lucian though down in the bot lane. I do think that those two picks are going to be getting a lot stronger for 8.18. And then also watch out for Victor in the mid lane. I still think that Victor is going to be a pretty weak blind pick. He's still going to have his weaker matchups there in the mid lane, but in certain situations as a counter pick, or if you do find yourself a good matchup, I do think Victor is going to be a lot better now in 8.18. So that is going to be it, guys. If you did enjoy the video, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.